Born in Czechoslovakia in the Sudeten-German section, which is the northern part of Czechoslovakia.
Okay.
Belonged to the Austrian Republic. I went to Nuremberg because I could speak English. I got a job at the courthouse and I met Reza and we got married. We were not affected by the war until pretty much at the end, when the bombing started, and we had some Russian bombings, we had some British bombings, not so much the Americans. So actually, as I say, we were not affected by the war that badly till the very end. When I graduated from high school, I got a gift from my parents to go to the Berlin Olympics. That was the 1936 Olympics, and well, you go to certain events. I chose to see when Jesse Owens was running, and Adolf Hitler came, and he was always up on a balcony, and he had Leni Riefenstahl, his movie-making lady, right next to him. And I saw Adolf, and I saw Jesse Owens run and win, and which was a great disappointment to the Führer, because he really wanted his German athlete to win.
So Adolf Hitler comes into the stadium. Describe that.
Well, you just heard a lot of shouting. I mean, you have to remember the stadiums are huge. That was just like the Olympics that you had now. You could only see him from a distance, and you heard this tremendous shouting, and everybody got up and they all yelled Heil Hitler, and they all raised their arms. But somebody asked me last night if how it was, whether they kind of pushed the political issue, and I can't say they did. This was really the Olympics, and there were a lot of nations there, and it was a competition of a different kind and peaceful, and there were no problems.
Ich verkünde die Spiele von Berlin zur Feier der ersten Olympiade neuer Zeitrechnung als eröffnet.
No, not at all. My father kept saying, he kept saying, the Jews in the United States will never let Adolf Hitler win. I still remember that.
Yeah.
When we got out, we could still get out. We got out before the Russians took the city over. Now, in the 50s, when the Hungarians were fleeing, that was a different story. Then they were under Russian occupation, and they were shooting up the city, and they really had to, there are several books out about that, they had to kind of sneak over the border and all that. But when we left, we didn't have the Russians yet. They were only fighting.
While you were, before the war ended, were you aware of some of the atrocities that were going on?
No, we never knew about it.
Mm-hmm.
Hungary was kind of isolated. We did not know anything about it. And if you asked somebody about it, they all said, can't be true, we can't believe it. Right?
Yep.
They all said that.
Yep.
Nobody knew anything unless you were involved. Now, at the very end, my parents had a Jewish lawyer, and before we were leaving, he was being taken away into a camp. So then we realized what's going on. But that was really right at the end of the war.
And your job was what?
Well, there were engineers there. There was a chief engineer, and I became his secretary. And I was the go-between between the German, well, the carpenters, plumbers, whatever they had. They were rebuilding the courthouse. It had one hit, right?
Yeah, one hit.
One bomb hit, so they had to rebuild the courthouse and repair it. And for that they used...
Make it bigger.
Yeah, and for that they used German labor, but they had American engineers doing it. They planned it. So I was a translator between the go-between between them. And once they finished the courthouse, I worked for U.S. Information Service.
So the job gets done, and then you work for U.S. Information?
Yes.
What did that mean?
Well, they were... what did we do, actually? United States, whatever they do.
Mostly information.
They give information out. Yeah.
So that's where you see a young photographer.
No, I was already, I had met Rezan already. That was,
Early.
after the courtroom was built, that job of mine was over, and then I got the job of the U.S. Information Service. But by then, we were already planning to get married, and I was coming, there was only, it's the end in between.
Okay, well, how'd you meet?
Well, Ray used to come in the office and look for supplies because he
All
was
the time.
fixing the dark room, and God, I always had to get a file from underneath or
She had
something.
good legs.
So we just started going out, starting dating, and we got engaged. And well, shall I tell them about this Warburg thing?
Sure, yes.
One of,
Because I was a displaced person.
yes, yeah.
They didn't know under what quota or whether I would have to be under a quota, because you couldn't come to the United States just like that and, walk in. And
Yeah.
although I was married to an American, there was a question about getting me into the States. So there was a Warburg Act, but it expired like the end of 1948, and Ray was told to send me over before that Warburg Act expires, because they were not sure if Congress would extend it. So I left. I left and came to the United States alone, and he stayed on for the other trials, and I stayed with his parents. But it was no problem because I spoke English.
I wanted to stay till the end of the trial, which was ending. 12 trials were going on, and it was at the same time as the last trial. So I stayed on for another 6 months, and they said, "Come home, come home, come home."
Yeah, his mother kept saying, "You better come home now. Your wife is here. You better come home." So finally, he came home.
And that was when? When did you actually,
49.
49?
I came
Yeah,
over.
you came.
I came over in December because I had to get in before December 31st, and it was one of the worst weathers they had, and everybody was sick, even the stewards. Oh, it was terrible.
Did Nuremberg mean much at the time in 1949 when you came back?
No, I don't think so.
Well, I had, when I opened the store, I was at Kodak for a week, and I met the president of Eastman Kodak Company, and they made some pictures for me that I had taken, and by 4 feet by 6 feet, and it went up near the ceiling, all along my store, and it was a highlight. And Mr. McGee's daughter, that's the president at the time of Eastman Kodak, his daughter was going to Mount Holyoke College right next door. So he came into the store and visited with me. God.
But he was asking whether people in Holyoke were impressed by you being in Nuremberg and all that.
People would come into the shop and see that.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah.
And what kind of reactions?
Well, they knew I had been in
They knew you'd been
Nuremberg,
there.
yeah.
You were famous in Holyoke.
I don't
Little
think they
famous.
knew how important the trial was.
Yeah. I'll say I am not famous in Holyoke. I am famous back in Nuremberg.
In Jamestown, New York, I'm
Yeah, now again, I'm in Jamestown, New York.
It's a wonderful story, the path from the Sudetenland,
Yeah.
your family
No,
getting to Holyoke.
It wasn't very much of a pass, but you've made it in Jamestown by your interviews here. Yeah.